Hey, community, welcome back. And if this is your first time here, I'm Dr. Blaire, a doctor in clinical psychology. And on this channel, we discuss psychology, inspiration, social justice, and all topics in between. First things first, hit that subscribe and bell button. I need to see you back next week. And of course, stay tuned because we're going to talk about emotional eating. Keep watching. All right, let's jump into it. So, last week we talked about emotional spending, and that was a tough one. This one just might be even tougher. Emotional eating. Whew. All right, so what is emotional eating? And you all know if I'm glancing down, I'm taking a look at my notes, but emotional eating is turning to food for comfort, with whether it's intentional or unintentional, consciously or unconsciously, but it is to ease stressors or for even a reward. And so let's get into some of the different reasons that we eat emotionally. Dun, dun, dun. Number one, when you're nervous and or anxious. When you're afraid, you are turning to food. Number two, boredom, loneliness, have nothing else to do, so instead I'll eat. 3 and 4 are probably the toughest ones to make. I'll say for myself. Around sadness and grieving. And number 4 is to celebrate. I bet you weren't expecting that. Why do I say 3 and 4 are the most common or toughest ones? And if you know, go ahead and drop it in the comments now. All right, I gave you time to respond. I believe that these are the toughest ones because they are socially accepted. Society considers them to be socially acceptable for various reasons. Now, let me get into some of the concerns or dangers about all 4 of these. Of course, we know that if we're overindulging in eating just to silence our emotions or to soothe emotional pain, it increases the likelihood of weight gain, which could lead to health problems, but not a guarantee. It could increase the inability to manage your emotions, which we already know from last week with emotional spending. It certainly does that without addressing, this emotional concern or concerns. It reinforces a poor cycle of behavior, or it reinforces a cycle of poor behavior. There we go, that's better. It increases even greater emotional pain, and I'll get into this a little bit more later. There's some neurological things that happens here, and lastly, it is unaddressed emotional problems or concerns. So not only does it grow emotional pain, but it also continues the unaddressed areas. And so why do I find 3 and 4 to be most dangerous? When we grieve in our society, in American society, it is not uncommon to take food to the family that is grieving, that is mourning in sadness. This is actually a kind gesture. It is a way of showing care. It is a way of saying, hey, we're here for you. In fact, some of the practical things are that a lot of the time when people are grieving, they have no energy, time, or even thought behind preparing a meal or getting food. So when the food is already there, it's readily available, it's a lot easy to continue to nourish your body, right? You don't want to not eat at all, because that could be dangerous. But also, you probably are not thinking about having to actually get food. But when you do, I'm feeling sad, so instead I will eat something that comforts me. And many of us know the science behind comfort food. When you eat comfort food, it actually scientifically releases chemicals in your body that says you feel better. It makes you feel better. And I'm kind of sinking in my chair because this is the reaction we might have from a tense place to a more relaxed place. And who wouldn't want to go from tension to relaxation? But again, as I said last week, these things are temporary. And so with grieving, society says this is okay in this moment. It is a way for us to express care. But for the person who's grieving, it may be a difficult time to balance between, am I eating because I'm hungry, or am I eating because I want to soothe other type of pain? It may not even be clear enough to distinguish the difference between if you are having hunger pains or are these emotional pains, because when you're deeply in sadness, grieving, or even any other type of emotion that you could be experiencing, things become unclear. They become very hazy, and people have difficulty deciphering between the difference of each. Yeah, yeah. So that is why I would consider sadness or even grieving to be the most dangerous. And then lastly, to celebrate. This is probably, I don't know. This is like top, I can't say if it tops number 3, but number 4 definitely is dangerous because we also say in society this is okay. So what do we do when we celebrate? Like, oh, you're graduating, it's time to have a party, let's go eat. And so we overindulge in eating in the moment of celebration, eating and drinking. This is not emotional drinking, but we could add that to the list for this one. Actually, for all of them. With that, it is society says this is okay to do. And it is okay. But again, we're talking about this overindulgence of it. And remember that then over time, when you do this consistently, your mind already feels that anytime it's already trained that anytime you celebrate, you get a reward. Think of it like this with a dog. When a dog, you want them to do a trick, you want them to follow a command, you give them a treat, and that is their reward. And so they do this pattern of they have a pattern or a cycle where they will only do behaviors with the thought of knowing that they will get a reward. In fact, all of us are kind of have that innate built that we do things for reward. This is why people go to work, so that they can get their reward, their payment at the end of the week. It is a reward to continue to reinforce the same behavior. And if you think about it here, it reinforces this behavior and it pairs the two together that if I have had a celebration, then I can get a reward. And this is why people say at the end of the week, I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to have a cheat day. It becomes a reward for being good or staying on good behavior or following your guidelines that you have set for yourself that was disciplined to a place where you don't have to be as disciplined. And it actually is the antithesis. It does the opposite, where it puts you in a place where you're being counterproductive to all of the work that you've been doing throughout the week. I digress. These are, again, concepts for you to have to assess for yourself. You're going to have to make decisions for yourself of if this is a thing that you're engaging in. If so, why? And how are you going to stop it? And so just like last week, these are the same solutions that you're going to have to look at. 1, recognize it. Is this a concern? Why is this a concern in my life? 2, address it. Actually start making those changes and behavior shifts for you to be better. And 3, assassinate the thing that is actually slowly killing you. And I say that because when we emotionally eat, how often are you saying, I'm going to emotionally eat and go grab a stick of celery? I'll wait. Not ever. Not ever. We're grabbing things that make us feel good. We're grabbing food that opens up certain parts of our brain. These things are unintentional in a way. In a way. Fried food makes you feel good for a certain reason, and then it makes you feel sluggish. I talked about neurological receptors. Let me talk about a little bit more. Neurological receptors are these receivers in our brain. It is an opening for our brain to be filled with certain messages, so to speak. When that receiver gets one, and the desire for this receptor continues to grow, the more that you put into it, the more it's going to open up. The same thing happens for people who smoke cigarettes, and why they end up becoming that need to smoke more often grows, because that receptor is growing larger and larger. It even happens with our physical stomach. The more we eat, our stomach stretches, so it takes more for it to be filled over time. And so when we overindulge in something, we actually end up giving our body a higher tolerance to be able to take in more of whatever it is that you have been taking in. So it never really becomes an end of a cycle. It just continues to open and open and open and open. And it's going to require some discipline, some change, some decisions to narrow it down and for that to start to shrink. And in fact, anybody would agree that it's safer just to not give yourself the problem, but it's a lot more discipline to have to dial back. But at the end of the day, you have to make a decision to start at one point in time, because if you continue longer, the longer you do it, the greater it becomes. And now you can't even see how wide it is because my hands are outside of the frame. That's what happens in our life. So we have to figure out how we can then bring it in. Now, my question to you is, if you want to bring it in, then who are you going to go to? Where are you going to go to get that type of support? Because this is actually something that we not only develop ourselves, I included, I've done it as well. I've shared before with y'all my addiction to flaming hots. Help me, y'all pray for me. I love them so much. I haven't eaten them in months at this point. It's been a challenge. Anywho's, with that being said, how are you going to make this shift and change? Who is them around you who can hold you accountable? What do you need? Some type of professional help? And if so, that's okay. We all need assistance in this area. And so seeking, if not a therapist, a coach, or a nutritionist who can help you to assess how this is impacting not only your physical health, but also your mental health. And so it's a pair between the two, because really the food concerns, the health concerns that come up afterward are secondary to the primary concern that you have unaddressed emotional pain, and really starting to look at that. And so there are multiple cycles to have to break, not only this pattern of seeking food to address the emotional pain, but the pattern of avoiding addressing the emotional pain, and then the pattern of having to developing a pattern of having to actually address it, and learning how to develop this pattern so that it becomes an enjoyable process and a release process by addressing it, as much of a release and or more of the release that you got from eating. Yeah. So I'm going to pause here, and I know that we can talk about this so much more and in depth. In fact, I'm thinking about maybe extending an invitation to some of you who I know watch frequently, and seeing if you'd like to join me here on YouTube to discuss some of the things that maybe you have worked to overcome. We did it last year, but also to give you an announcement of something else we did last year. We had a lot of guests during the month of May for Mental Health Awareness Month, and as you know, it's the end of April, which means May will be starting in a minute now. And because of that, I want to let you know that I have special plans in store for next month. I won't say too much, but stay tuned. Continue to share with other people. Make sure that you are following me on other platforms at Facebook, Instagram, Clubhouse, and of course subscribe here on YouTube, so that you are here and first to see what's going to happen for next month, because I want you to not only get this information, but to be engaged in the process of positively making a shift and change in our community. Thank y'all so much for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, and share with your community, and be sure to share with someone specific who needs to hear a bit more about emotional eating. And of course, before you go and I see you next time, if I'm great and you're great, then we're a great community.